morning, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Mornings with the Outlaw. I am the Outlaw, John Rocha, and thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Friday morning for a number of reasons. But I look to your right there on the screen or left, depending on how you're holding the screen right now, and you don't see Alex Shashek because Alex is handling some business and some things going down with her move, so she couldn't be on the show today. I reached out to this incredible friend of mine, Matt Atchity, on the show from Moviefone. He has an incredible podcast he does with Alonzo Duralde and Christy there. It's so much fun to have you here on the show, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. That opening music reminds me I need to turn you on to a place called Western Aloha that has Western style, like Western cut Aloha shirts. Because
what?
The whole Aloha shirt thing has a Western cowboy influence to it. So I'll have to send you some of those.
I would love that.
They look good.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'm 100% down with that.
It's part of my thing that, everybody should be wearing Aloha wear.
Yeah. Well, you look great, Matt. It's been a
Thanks.
while since we've seen each other. The beard's out now, and you look at a beautiful background there with a beautiful pool. What's the update with you, my man?
We moved to Northridge. And it's been great. Got a new house, got a pool, which is awesome. I have yet to figure out that somebody's got a waterproof laptop so I can be in the pool all the time. Come on, it's 2020, right? I don't need a flying car. I don't need a jetpack, but can we get somebody started on the waterproof laptop so I can sit in the water and work? Right. Yeah. Sure. I can do a show with a GoPro in the pool. Right. But it's not the same. Right. I want to be in my lounge chair, in my float, typing, doing my work. That would be awesome. No, it's good. Look, like the rest of us. I'll tell you one thing about moving into a house in a pandemic. Man, you get a lot of housework done. You get used to that house awful quick.
Yeah. Same thing.
Right?
We're celebrating 1 month of moving out of Los Angeles into a house in San Diego, or down in San Diego. So it's our 1 month anniversary yesterday. And you're right. You really get used to the house, and we're paying less now than what we were paying in LA for that 2-bedroom apartment. And we're in a great community, a chill neighborhood. It's nice, man, to be able to.
And there are some
positives.
Terrific tiki bars down in San Diego. Oh my God. The grass skirt is amazing. For those people that are listening in San Diego and know the grass skirt, Rocha, you gotta go. It's so first of all, it's like a speakeasy. You got to go into a sushi joint and tell them you have a reservation, and they open a freezer door, and then you go down this hallway of lava rock of pumice, wall lava, and then you're in the room. Then there's Bali High, which is this super old school restaurant. There's a lot of good places out there, man.
All right, you talk me into it. I'm absolutely going to be going to check that out for sure. And Matt, for those people who may be watching and don't know, can you give a little bit of a biography on your experience with movies and criticism?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I've been covering the movie beat long time. Since 97, 98.
Wow.
I was working for, I started out with a thing called Entertainment Asylum, which was part of AOL. Was at Yahoo Movies for a while. My biggest job was being editor-in-chief of Rotten Tomatoes for almost 10 years.
Yes.
From about, I think that would be 2006 to about 2016, 2017 to about 2006 to about 2016, almost 10 years. And then I've been at Moviefone for the last, it's coming up on 2 years. So Moviefone, as we were part of MoviePass.
Yes.
That was a wild ride.
Say the least.
But I've been on the Schmodown. I think I was one of the early competitors on the Schmodown.
Sure.
Back when it was a lot easier. It's boy. It's guys like you were always making it tough, but there was a thing where early on, dilettantes like me and Gray, who just kind of knew movies, could come in and do really well. And we did really well, but God, the level of competitors, I know people who watch the Schmodown are like, oh, Matt, you don't know the game. There is that. I'm like if you look at pro wrestling, I'm one of those guys that probably would have been, if not a big face, like somebody who was kind of reliable.
Yeah.
Right. Like the second Hart brother, right?
Yeah.
Like something like that, right?
Nice connection.
Right. So, but now, like the way it is now, like it's so, like it's just intense. The other thing too is like I'm pushing 50, man. Like I'm not as fast as I used to be.
I hear you, man.
I do think, like if I was, I've said this before to some people, and I'll say it here, like 15 years ago, like 35-year-old me, I'd have slaughtered everybody. Like I was just that guy. But the thing is, like I'm older now. I'm not as fast. And the other thing is, I'm not quite in touch with the movies that the question writers are writing. Right. Whereas I think being more of that same age group. So The other thing too is like, I mean, not to go off on a total tangent about this, but the way that the Schmodown works now, and like just the level of trivia that's out there. Like I grew up in an environment where like there were TV and books and movies, and that was it. And so like if you had a knowledge base, like if you really like you had to work to pick that stuff up, right? Like I had a bunch of Star Wars books and a bunch of books. Like I could tell you, for instance, like that speeder bike that Mandalorian's riding around in, and today's and yesterday's is based on a design out of the that shows up in the Return of the Jedi sketchbook. And it was right. And they have like that sketchbook that came out around Return of the Jedi has all these awesome speeder bike designs. Yeah. And that was one of them that they designed. I think, and I don't remember, it might've been a Gennaro sketch, but like, I recognize that, right? I think that's where my stuff is, but like the newer stuff, like I'm just not quite there. So,
Well, I mean, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. And I'm glad you're on the show today, because this is the first time we're making this change with the show here, Mornings with the Outlaw. For people who are watching, it is now going to be a weekly show. This is its time, 8:30 a.m. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about the big news from the week. But sometimes we'll get breaking news. And Matt, let's get into it. Just got this breaking news coming over the wire here on Variety. Johnny Depp is stepping down from portraying the Dark Wizard Gellert Grindelwald in the Fantastic Beasts film franchise. He wrote this on Instagram. He said, "I wish to let you know that I have been asked to resign by Warner Brothers from my role as Grindelwald in Fantastic Beasts, and I have respected and agreed to that request." And of course, this exit comes days after he lost his libel suit against newspapers who publish The Sun, the British newspaper The Sun, and the tabloid's executive editor Dan Wooten over a 2018 article alleging he was a wife beater. The judge found enough credibility in some of the claims from Amber Heard that in the end did not rule in Johnny Depp's favor. So he departs the franchise after having done 2 installments that were, for the most part, unspectacular. And now someone else will step in. Matt, first of all, what's your reaction to this? And second of all, do you think this maybe now kind of revives the franchise in a lot of people's eyes who are troubled by some of the accusations surrounding Johnny Depp?
I mean, it's a good step, right? Like it's a step forward, but he ain't the only one. He's not the only toxic person that's involved in those productions, right?
Fair point.
Look, people are still giving Mel Gibson roles.
Batman's coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how is that not a Kevin Smith movie? Anyway. Look, like, here's the thing. Don't drink and hit people. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of, also it's hard to win a libel suit when you did stuff. Yeah. Like I get that he's been asked to step down and from Warner Brothers standpoint, you got to do that. Right. First of all, Grindelwald has changed the way he looks. We've had Bond, get recast on Teen Times. So sure. Recast. I mean, they did that with, they had a Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Right?
With Gambone coming in for Richard Harris. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So sure. Recast it. Rowling needs to take a break from social media.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. Like if I'm Warner Brothers, like I'm over there begging, like, JK, just please get off Twitter, stay like, she's got her points. I don't really agree with them, but Twitter's the worst way to make your points. Just absolutely. Right. And she needs to spend a year or so just off social media at all. Right. And, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think the other thing with the Grindelwald movies or the Fantastic Beasts movies, like they just need to be better movies. You know, I think they're trying to get blood from a stone there, and you know, maybe they need to try something else rather than keep trying to milk the Harry Potter franchise.
Right. I mean, some of the accusations around the Hobbit movies were, you know, you're taking one book and spreading it out over 3 films. And, you know, I like that Hobbit trilogy, but I get that a lot of people love Lord of the Rings do not. And then you look at this situation as well. This was a pamphlet. This was a pamphlet that was mentioned or talked about in the Harry Potter franchise when she was writing those books. She had not written out these books. All these things that they're going on have no source material necessarily. So JK has kind of been having her first real jab at screenwriting without having a source material of her own to use in this situation. And I think it's shown in these last 2 films. I agree with you. I think this is a good first step. You know, whatever your feelings are about Johnny Depp one way or the other, this situation was no longer tenable. And I wonder where Ezra Miller lies in this, because Ezra Miller, there's video of Ezra Miller grabbing that young woman by the throat and slamming her to the ground. And, you know, DC has said nothing about that with Flash, and Warner Brothers has said nothing about that. Another person involved in this production as well. So where are we going to get with that? But I think you have to move JK out of this thing, and you have to move Depp out of this thing. So the optics of it all, people can feel like they're doing a fresh new approach to this moving into the 3rd movie, because that 2nd movie was an insult to a lot of Harry Potter fans. And the way to get them back, I think, is making moves like this. And Warner Brothers doesn't want to walk away from this cash cow, Matt. You know that. You've seen studios, as you said, for many years. When they see potential, they will beg and cajole and plead for certain people to move off or pay a little bit extra to get them to move off so they can see a potential of more money down the road. And I don't think it's too late for them to revive this franchise or resuscitate this franchise. And certainly this is a good first move.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, there's a lot of, we'll talk about this when we talk about Mandalorian later, but you know, if nothing else, Rowling gave us a really rich world to play around in. And I think that, you know, bring in some new screenwriters, bring in some new writers, let somebody play around in that world.
New director too. Enough with David Yates. New director.
Like you could probably get some really good stuff going on there. You just gotta like hand over the reins, which she may not want to do, but you know, that's them's the breaks.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see where this all happens. Anything comes to mind? I mean, are you well schooled in the Harry Potter franchise? Do you have an idea of who you'd like to see maybe step into the Grindelwald role? I know I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have to answer, but just kicking it around, the possibility.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, look, put Farrell back in it, right?
Yeah, why not?
Like, give it back to. I mean, look, Colin Farrell's clearly taken roles that he's having fun with, right?
Yeah.
And it's great to see because it's like Colin Farrell having fun in a role is really fun to watch. So let him do it. Or, you know, you want to really go crazy, keep recasting it, right? Like we
every movie.
Well, yeah, because like Grindelwald changes his face, right? Like we see that. So okay, like cast a new guy every time. Why not?
Like the Master in Doctor Who, just cast a new person every time, or a new Doctor Who every time.
Exactly.
That absolutely works. Why not? It's a British franchise, so why not? That could be interesting. Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, you've got to match somebody up with Jude Law. So who around there? I'm like, what are people's fantasies of Jude Law, and are they going to explore the homosexual angle a bit more here now going forward? Is WB willing to do that? I wonder, because it is J.K. Rowling's mouth that said that Dumbledore and Grindelwald had a homosexual relationship. So are they going to explore that with a new recasting? I wonder. And if moving her off and all this transphobia situation that's happening, if moving her off allows that to be something the gay community can now embrace again wholeheartedly, that would be good to see as well, in my opinion. But I love your idea of bringing Colin Farrell back. That's such a great idea. Simple and to the point, man. All right, let's before, and we'll keep tabs on this. And before that, let's get into a first Streamlab that's been sent in here. And please send in your Streamlabs and Super Chats. You see the address right above Matt's head there, streamlabs.com/John Rocha says. Send in your comments, send in your thoughts as we talk about these subjects today, and send in your Super Chats as well. Jay Scotty for real donated. He said, yo, are you watching the new season of Fargo on FX? Nice to see Chris Rock afforded some standout dramatic scenes among an ensemble cast. Does his involvement in Spiral excite you? Additionally, favorite Coen brothers film, Hail Caesar, is unfairly maligned. Yeah, Matt, are you watching the recent season of Fargo right now?
No, I haven't been watching it. I haven't. I just haven't had a chance to. There's too much TV.
Yeah, there is too much TV right now. What about Spiral? Are you excited about Rock being a part of this? Kind of a Saw reboot or reimagining?
Yeah, I think that'll be fun. Like, look, I'm up for anything. Always like, I'm kind of, to a certain extent, I always try and go to movies with an open mind. So, and I like seeing stuff that's fresh, right? Like, you do what we do. I mean, at some point you get like, I hunger for different types of stories and stories I haven't seen before. So, if you're going to take something like rebooting a Saw franchise and really go in a wild direction with it, sure. Let's see what you got.
Okay. And favorite Coen Brothers film? Do you have one?
That's
super tough.
I will remember there's always going to be a soft spot in my heart for Raising Arizona. That was the first one I saw in theaters and was literally crying from laughter in that movie. It's just like, I kind of went in there not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
That was an age when, you don't get pummeled by all of the, kind of pre-show entertainment about a particular film. Right. I love Lebowski. Who doesn't? Yeah. Right. But yeah, those, and I also really, really like Hudsucker Proxy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That one's often overlooked, but I think that's a terrific movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll have to go with Miller's Crossing. That's one of my favorite movies, bar none. Honestly, and people don't talk about that movie. I'm kind of like quietly favorite film of a lot of people who love the Coen Brothers movie, but Coen Brothers work. But I agree with you 1,000%. I think Raising Arizona is still my favorite. With Oh Brother Where Art Thou coming right close, right behind, because their meticulous attention to detail in Oh Brother Where Art Thou is incredible. As someone who grew up in the South, it was phenomenal to watch them capture something, even though they went back in time, like kind of a pseudo period piece. They still captured the Southern vibe so well and authentically that you see there. So I really love that. But Raising Arizona, Nicolas Cage doesn't get enough love for what he does in that movie. He's so genuine and organic, right? Like I was rewatching it again the other day, like last 30 minutes, and his reaction to the warthog from hell after, he knocks him off the motorcycle and the guy gets up and starts coming towards him. His gag reflex of the fear that he's about to get pummeled into oblivion is so real and believable.
And William Forsythe in that movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Almost unrecognizable William Forsythe in that movie is like every time I see him doing something serious, all I can think is like, he smiled at me.
So good. Kevin Lennon says we need a sequel to The Big Lebowski. Yeah, at some point, and hopefully, Jeff Bridges will be up for it. A great choice, Mr. Jonesy. No Country for Old Men, certainly, and Miller's. Yeah, No Country. As you get older as a man, No Country starts to take a lot of. I don't know, it starts to appeal to you on a lot of levels as you get older and hear some of the words from Tommy Lee Jones for sure. All right, let's move on. I don't see any more Streamlabs and Super Chat. Send them in when you got them. Got any questions you want to ask Matt and I, send them in as we go along. The next thing we should jump into, Matt, is this Tenet stuff. Christopher Nolan, announcing the debut of the Blu-ray coming out on December 15th in 4K and digital and DVD as well. Tenet is going to be released by them. It made $347 million at the global box office, with only 53 million domestically, of course, with COVID affecting that deeply. But Nolan was commenting about this and said that in one of his comments, he said, but I am worried that the studios are drawing the wrong conclusions from our release, because he felt pretty positive about the box office. He said that rather than looking at where the film has worked well and how that can provide them with much needed revenue, they're looking at where it hasn't lived up to pre-COVID expectations, and we'll start using that as an excuse to make exhibition take all the losses from the pandemic instead of getting in the game and adapting or rebuilding our business, in other words. What's your thoughts on his comments here? Is he off base, or do you think he's on base here?
Could I roll my eyes anymore? Look, I think Chris Nolan is a very talented, very iconic filmmaker. Like he makes, like the Coen Brothers, he makes a movie that is a Chris Nolan movie. And I haven't seen Tenet yet because it's not safe to go to the theaters.
Right.
I do think he made the wrong move insisting that the movie came out only in theaters, and now I feel like he's doubling down, right? And I know a lot of people are, there's a lot of Nolan fans out there who will probably get mad at me for saying this, but I think his ego's gotten a little bit of the best of him on this one.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a thing where it's like, look, dude, nobody planned for a pandemic. Shit happens, suck it up like the rest of us and either accept that, I think calling out studios on this, the exhibition game is really rough right now.
Yeah.
I get it. Right. I think that AMC it's going to be really tough for AMC to survive this without filing for bankruptcy. I think the other companies, like Regal, Cineworld is based out of England. And so I think they have some European theaters. I think they're better served to survive this. I think the deal with that AMC cut with Universal helps them, because the hidden part of that announcement was that AMC gets a little bit of a piece of the rentals of the home video money from Universal Films. So,
that's good. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the kind of deal I would like to see the studios make with the exhibitors. But that being said, the studios, it's a weird mix, right? Because I think that the studios would happily do day and date releases, but the exhibitors are what keep them from doing that. The business is really cockeyed right now. Look, I could go on. I mean, one of the things that I learned while Moviefone was owned by MoviePass was learning kind of the exhibition business inside and out. And I think a lot of us don't really quite follow that as much as we follow the production side. And that's a fascinating business. And you really start to realize how those factors affect theatrical. That being said, the rescinding of the consent of the Paramount decree, I think is going to change things, because I think you'll start seeing studios, the ones that have the right kind of money, doing maybe leveraged buyouts or straight up buyouts of certain companies, because now they can own theaters again. Disney already can have a stake in Pacific, I believe it is, because they weren't part of that degree. Anyway, I all that to say, I think Nolan's a little bit off base here. Because again, like, the worst thing that happened to him is that there's a pandemic and people can't go to the movies, and take your lumps and you'll be okay. Right. But like preemptively saying, oh, the studios aren't going to like us anymore, and they're not going to let me make my own, movies that, he starts to sound like Terrence Malick, I think. Like,
well,
who's a talented filmmaker, but it's a little like, okay, come on.
Everyone's got their ulterior motive here, I think, and this more, as you said, covering since the late 90s, like everyone's got their ulterior motive in this city. Like for Nolan, it's about, I want to be able to make the movies I want to make as freely as possible. And look, Nolan's box offices have shrunk over the last few films as he's become more kind of niche in how he approaches these large scale movies. He's telling a grand story, but it's also relying on a lot of mental tricks to get like the time stuff. And of course, Dunkirk was pretty straightforward, but Dunkirk was also jumping around to the point where you got confused to who the lead of the film was. And Inception, I think, was this last great, like really interesting exploration of that. But Tenet confused a lot of people, and people didn't have I think he's a little bit off saying that people had these pre-COVID expectations. They lived up to pre-COVID. That's not true at all. I think he did. Yeah, he did. And I think people wanted, and I think what the studio was looking for was a huge reaction from the fans comparable to the amount of seats that were available for people to get. If they were constantly selling out 50% of the theaters that were, in the audience wise per theater, then you would see that people are excited to come back to the theater. People like this movie. And so studios and AMC, and I think investors as well, would have been more inclined to be a part of helping revive movie theaters and giving people a place to go. And some of these movies that had been delayed would not have been delayed. They would have come out, and a couple of these studios would have taken some losses on them just to have something to be put in the theater and recoup some of the money in this situation. So I think he's a bit off on that. But hey, look, Nolan's a far more intelligent guy about making movies than I am. It rings a little hollow what he's saying, Matt.
Yeah, look, like he's almost the last bastion. You almost wonder if he's like a throwback to that new Hollywood and those guys, in the 70s who, and I think he needs to be careful. He's going to end up in Michael Cimino territory with something like Heaven's Gate. No, seriously, right? Like he could kind of write it. He has. And I'm not saying Tenet is bad, but I think he needs to be careful, because the movies he wants to make now, look, like, could he go back to doing something like Memento? Absolutely, right? And that's a terrific movie, but it's also a shoestring budget compared to what he's doing now. And I think he likes those giant budgets, and he doesn't want to give them up. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to either. Yeah. But I think, sometimes you just got to be like, again, there's a pandemic. I think he's just got to take his lumps like everybody else. And, I worry that he's preemptively trying to say, like, hey, we need to be doing the business like we've been doing all along. Like, look, he could get that kind of budget if he went to Netflix or Amazon, right?
Great
but
point.
He doesn't. Right. But the thing is, like, but those are small screens.
Right. In his mind. Yeah.
In his mind, those are small screens. Now, other people are going there, right?
Scorsese.
Scorsese, right? Yeah. I mean, he could get those budgets again, but it's like,
in his mind, like, I think you make a great point. Is he a guy who thinks old school versus new school and adapting and improvising? Ironically, Scorsese being one of the people that, like, just kind of where whoever paid Scorsese, he will make the movie there. He's one of those guys. Like Weinstein with Gangs in New York. Like, he tried to get Gangs in New York made for so many years, and it wasn't until Weinstein convinced so many people to invest in the Gangs in New York that he was finally able to make it at the budget that he wanted to make it. Same thing with The Irishman, But Nolan does end this. And by the way, this is an interview in the LA Times. If you want to read the whole interview with him in the LA Times, and he's promoting a new book about his filmography. It's called The Nolan Variations. He hasn't written the book, but someone else wrote the book, but it's coming out and he's promoting it. He did say at the end of his quote, long-term moviegoing is a part of life, like restaurants and everything else. But right now, everybody has to adapt to a new reality. But Christopher Nolan, that includes you too. So we shall see if he's willing to do that as well.
The last thing I'm going to say on this is I wish that, I'd love to see a guy like Nolan, rather than focus on the big screen, like hint at him like, hey man, you got 10 hours.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to give you the budget for a 10-hour series. What are you going to do with that? Right. Like, imagine the time jumping he could do and like the craziness and the messing with people he could do with a 10-hour series.
Well, his brother did that with Westworld.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. It's certainly possible. And you see what Fincher did with Mindhunter. So certainly a 10-episode series would be fantastic. And Ridley Scott, right, with the what was it, Raised by Wolves, the one that's out now. I mean, that's a lot of filmmakers are going towards that. I think Devs is Alex Garland. So Ben Rayner sent in a super chat and says it's easy for Nolan to say that it's not his money. It's not his money. I think he should have waited to release next year. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think he would have waited, though.
I don't think he would have waited either. And I think that there's probably some financial constraints that go into that, sometimes, like, it's certain, the way the financing is sometimes it's easier to bump certain movies than it is others. And I wonder, because the other thing, like, ultimately the other part you're kind of coming up against too is, like, Warner Brothers is a part of a publicly held company. Yeah, you got to try and do something to save your bottom line. And I mean, it's complicated, but I think you should have waited too. I agree.
Right. And MK Songbird, I hate to agree. Yeah, Ridley Scott was only a producer. Ridley Scott is never only a producer, especially when he directed some of the episodes. So yes, it is created by Aaron Guzikowski. So I do take your point, MK Songbird, but Ridley was very involved with this production. Just letting you know. Just putting that out there for you to consume. Let's see. And ladies and gentlemen, we got 150 y'all watching, 172 y'all watching us live. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to hit that like button. We're only at 49 likes. It's essential for you to hit the like button as well on this video, and keep sending in your Streamlabs and Super Chats as we go along. For those of you asking about the Johnny Depp news, I see some of the people in the chat. You've gotten here late. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. So finish out the show with us and then go back and watch that first part when we talk about the Johnny Depp news and give our opinions. All right, let's jump into this trailer. We're going to get into Mandalorian season 2 and episode 2 in just a second. Want to touch on one last Star Wars thing before we do so. Matt, this trailer for the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special, this seems to be something that you might enjoy, given the Hawaiian shirts, giving your laid-back attitude. How did this strike you humor-wise? How did this strike you story-wise? And overall, what was the vibe you got watching this trailer?
Loved it. I'm all in. The Lego animation, not just the Lego movies, but some of the like lower key Lego TV stuff and especially the stuff they're doing with Star Wars. Those guys are having fun. Those guys are clearly having fun, and that fun is infectious. And I'm all in on this. This is going to be terrific. I can't wait. we're going to cover it on our podcast. We'll do a review on Breakfast All Day. We talked about that, but yeah, I mean, look, like I'd love for them to re-release the original holiday special. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but you know, that they're allowing someone to kind of make fun of the old one and riff on that. Great.
Yeah. Yeah, and Lego does a great job of doing that, right? If you watch those C-3PO ones they did a couple of years ago, they love walking that line between parody and making fun of the thing, but not insulting it and still respecting it. And they do such a great job. And throughout this trailer, you can sense they're having a lot of fun. You know, I mean, Lando getting the rap from Admiral Akbar is brilliant.
Old and young Han, like, you want to go first? I'll
you shoot first. That was great. And I loved Vader trying to cover up him going like, oh, my son, sons, there's suns in the sky. That kind of stuff was really, really funny. But I want to know who's voicing Rey, because she's really captured Rey's accent, her distinct English accent in some of her lines, and they haven't released the cast list fully. We do have Rosemary Tran coming back as Kelly Marie Tran coming back as Rose Tico, and of course Bailey D. Williams there as Lando Calrissian. You are going to get a number of other voices coming, Anthony Daniels as C-3PO and what have you. So, and D. Bradley Baker coming back as the voice of the clones. So throughout, so it looks awesome, and it's I think with this craziness that's been happening in the world in 2020, man, it's nice to have something that's coming out in a few days that might put a big smile on your face. It's a 45-minute holiday special, and you're right. I wish they'd released the old holiday special, but will we get allusions? Will we get a B. Arthur cameo from someone? Will we get like a human cameo in all of this? I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about Life Day, right? So there's obviously an awareness because the Lego guys we've seen, especially in that Star Wars stuff, they'll throw in Easter eggs to other things, right? So I think we'll get, you know, if not, I mean, at the very least, you know, we're going to get another four-armed cook, maybe. You know, will Itchy make an appearance? You know,
that's a great point. I'd love to see that too. That's actually a really good point. So we'll see. I mean, it's coming out November 17th. As I said, it's 44 minutes. So many exciting things to enjoy. And it's going to be going through the world within the world. So in essence, everything that people were worried about in The Rise of Skywalker, once that episode happened in the Clone Wars, in the Rebels, people were afraid that they were going to cop out and go through the world within worlds. Well, it looks like they're taking that fear and twisting on its head and make it a funny thing where Rey is time jumping. I mean, that scene where she's like, "Oh my God, it's my master's master, my master's master," like all of that, just really, really funny stuff. So we'll see when it comes out. We'll certainly do a review of it here on the Outlaw Nation as well. All right, let's jump in without further ado. Let me see if I've got any more Streamlabs or Super Chats. Keep sending those in, ladies and gentlemen, and keep hitting that like button. But let's get into The Mandalorian, Matt. First of all, have you been a fan of this series since it came out? What's your vibe about it now as we walk into season 2?
You know, I was thinking about this morning, and I'm so happy with the way that they've tackled this show because they've, you know, Lucas gave us such a rich world for people to play in. And one of the advantages that Mandalorian has is that it's not really stuck into the continuity, right? Like they're not forced to make things make sense. They've got so much freedom that, yes, there are some guardrails there, but Favreau can kind of do almost anything he wants within that. So he's giving us this Western series, which is terrific, right? I mean, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of Sergio Leone. I mean, God, that first episode, there's so much Sergio Leone in this, right? You know, yes, there's a bit of Lone Wolf and Cub in there, obviously. You know, which look like, although they're different eras, and they do say different things, there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, we see this from Kurosawa. Like, samurai movies are rich with things to do. So are Westerns, and lifting the best parts of those is what made Star Wars. And Favreau's really clued into that. I think in a lot of cases, especially with the prequels, like you lost sight of that. And this feels really in line with, like, this could have come out right around the time of Star Wars, and people would be losing their minds, right? Yeah, true. So I'm really happy with this. And, you know, similarly, the way, you know, Star Trek Discovery has basically rebooted itself. Yeah. Right. They're not locked into this prequel territory. Like, oh, okay, let's go, you know, 1,000 years in the future, and we can kind of do whatever we want. We have a lot of freedom there. So that's what they're doing here. You know, there is a lot of freedom. I'm loving to see where it goes. This, you know, that first episode of this season so many Easter eggs. It was bonkers. So happy to see R5D4 like back in action.
Yeah.
And then, now we're getting this little kind of offshoot story that, is it driving the main narrative? Maybe.
Right.
Is it? I mean, it's sort of a bottle episode, but it all works. It's all solid, and it's not quite the heights. But look, this is not a bad one. It's a nice little adventure and moves things along. And Pedro Pascal continues to be great. Like, one of the things I'm constantly impressed with is how he can show us so much without ever seeing his face or even hearing him. Right? Like, when he shrugs at the child, and it's just such the like, what'd you expect? Right? And it really does kind of throw us back. You can't help but think of The Man with No Name from Leone, right? Like, all of this stuff, like,
I also think, and for the people who are watching us, this we're not going to spoil anything. This will be a non-spoiler discussion because we want to respect the fact that people are still waking up and focused on an election, probably more so than watching The Mandalorian and then working their way to The Mandalorian as it comes up. So we're not going to spoil anything here, but we will say this, and that we'll talk about it here. And I really like the vibe of this episode as well. I know a lot of people were worried last season. If they're in the middle of the season, like, this feels like creature of the week type stuff. And in this episode, there is a little bit of that for sure, but this is also the furthering of the relationship between Baby Yoda, or the child, as you can see here, and the Mandalorian. You're furthering that relationship, and you've got Peyton Reed coming in, putting his unique taste on it. And I love the fact that they're leaning in even harder on Amy Sedaris' character, Peli Motto, having her be a part of this thing, and they're picking up where they left off. And you're getting the chance to see the Mandalorian fight. This, for those of us who are old enough, Matt, we remember like Kung Fu and these and the Incredible Hulk with Bill Bixby. Like, those were the shows that you enjoyed, and you weren't necessarily looking for this massive through line. You were just happy to enjoy spending time with the character and having them get challenged within the story of that particular episode. And certainly that happens here in some interesting ways. There's some Blade Runner vibes to this in how they're looking at the Spawn moving around and the way Baby Yoda's looking at that. There are some other vibes throughout. Of course, Peyton Reed making a little fun reference to himself with that character or species that's playing cards with Peli Motto. And then what happens at the end there brings you back to the vibe of remembering, oh yes, this is happening in a Star Wars universe. So these people involved with the Star Wars universe can show up at any time. And so I enjoyed that about the episode for sure.
One of the great things about this show is that, Favreau is our age, right? Mm-hmm. Like, Favreau's around our age. And I don't think, probably, I mean, look, I hate to sound like that old guy, but there's a lot of fans out there that don't appreciate what a disappointment Boba Fett was. Right? Like, the lead up and what you see in the original holiday special is this killer like this great cartoon. It's like, man, this guy, I don't know about this guy, right? Like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Like, what the hell? And there's all this buildup, and it's like, man, that's all the time he gets in Empire, right? And then then in Jedi, like, man, that guy goes out like a bitch, like he gets killed accidentally, And so what this series is doing is like, oh, this is what we wanted out of that Boba Fett reveal, right? This is the thing that you and I and Jon Favreau waited 40 years to get, 30 years to get, right? Yeah. But hey, better late than never, because this is the like, oh, this anti-hero, like, oh, I don't know about this guy, like, ooh, let's go. And so we're getting this amazing series of stories, and yes, he's an anti-hero, but he's got his own honor code, and this is great. Now, but you're going to get a lot of people like, well, I guess there's frogs in the Star Wars universe. Now that he said I don't speak frog.
Absolutely. There are also some alien vibes in this, with what happens with Baby Yoda when they land on that planet. And the planet, a lot of people thought it might be Ilum, it might be Hoth. It was not that at all. So that's another ice planet or another snow planet that we're throwing in to the conversation here. So that's going to be, I think a lot of people are going to run away with that one as well, trying to wonder what overall stood out from you from this episode before we wrap up our kind of mini non-spoiler review of this thing.
One thing is, man, that kid will eat anything. Like, right? I mean, there's a version of that universe where somebody else on the Star Wars equivalent of YouTube has a similar child and is doing some show that's like, what won't the baby eat? Right. I think the thing is, man, Mando needs either like an R2 unit or an engineer. Like, but the other thing is like, man, you just like shoot a few sparks into something, you go right back into space. Like, okay. I mean,
yeah.
You know, and I guess the other thing we know is, I mean, we already knew this, but like, yeah, that suit's not airtight, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and you know, there's a number of we get that he's back on the Mos Eisley Cantina, so we're getting more of that exposure here because, like we said, it's picking up right where they left off. They're playing Sabak, so you know, there's little things that are going on. There's references to Greedo and what have you, and Jabba the Hutt. So those are not spoiler things; those are just references that are made throughout. So look for those. And
I didn't have time to do it. I want to go back and translate the Arabesh writing that's over the door. I hope somebody in the comments have seen that. If you have, like, let us know. But I want to go back and look at that and see what that sign says. It probably just says something like booze.
No droids. But yeah, I mean, what you're seeing here too is that taking care of a child, once again, no spoiler, but taking care of a child is not as easy or as cute as you think it is when you're trying to take that child supposedly to its people, whether that be Jedi or other Yodas. There's a lot to be asked of the Mandalorian, and in the end, he's got to take a bounty or two, doesn't he? Here to stay alive, be able to pay. I mean, is he well off? Is he independently wealthy? Has he bountied enough to be able to take on this huge task, which seems to be costing him money left and right without no new money coming in, or without new money coming in?
Yeah, I mean, you know, all his money's in his clothes, right? Clothing rich, cash poor. Right. I mean, he's, you know, how much does fuel cost? Right. Yeah. Who knows?
Harboring it.
I mean, look, like, you can have all those arguments, but really, like, all of that comes down to, like, well, it's an issue when the writers make it an issue.
Right. Good point. Very good point. All right, we'll move on from there. There'll be a spoiler review coming later on today from us here on the Outlaw Nation with the Geek Buddies, with Mike Vogel and Shannon McClung. You know, over 7,000 you all watched our review last week. So we're hoping for that you all come back and watch our review this week. And maybe there'll be some battles like there were last week about whether that is Boba Fett or not, because I'm not 100% sold that it's him, but I know a lot of you are.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Man, you're going to show Tamura Morrison as somebody without armor in a show about getting the armor back, and you've mentioned that the Krayt Dragon ate the Sarlacc? Come on.
That's okay. All right.
Because the other thing that show established is, like, okay, well, Mandalorian armor will survive a Krayt Dragon, and we know that you don't digest immediately in the Sarlacc, right? It's 1,000 years. So, okay.
Maybe that's what happened. Oh, nice heads up. Thank you, MK Songbird. 50% off Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble until November 30th. Hell yeah. Is that time again? I'm jumping into that. All right, so let's move on from that, and we're going to talk about something. Look, there's not a lot of news going on this week, not a lot of big entertainment news really for us to get into. I think Matt and I covered pretty much most of it.
It is a really slow news week in general,
right?
Isn't it?
I think they knew what was happening this week, and people like slowed down with the news.
Wait, is there something going on in politics?
Yeah, exactly. You know, as we have the conversation this morning in the election, Joe Biden has pulled ahead in a number of these states that were battleground states: Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia. And so there's a lot of people starting to slowly possibly call the race for Joe Biden. But what this is a very tight and contentious race. And I thought it might be fun on a Friday to just have a conversation with somebody who knows so much about movies like Matt Atchity and talk about our favorite election or political movies that have come out, and maybe suggest some for you all to watch during this election weekend as we kind of consume the final vestiges of this of these votes. Matt, is there a movie when you think election or political movie? Is there one that stands out for you. And before Matt answers real quick, the rest of you all, please send in your political and election movies as we talk about it. Send them in through Streamlabs or Super Chats, or send them in the comment section, and I might bring some of them up on the screen for us to talk about. So please, Matt, what is it? What do you think about? Or
there's it's all over the place, right? I mean, I think Primary Colors does a solid job of showing what it's like inside a campaign. I mean, obviously it's dramatized in a lot of places, but I think that one is really good. I always love Dave. I think Dave is such a fun movie. One of my favorites, and this is a little, it's in a bit of different direction, but one of my favorite movies of all time is the original Frankenheimer, Manchurian Candidate.
Oh yeah.
Right. Which again, people will, in the last election were like, man, are we getting close to something like that? I mean, and speaking of Frankenheimer, we might be staring down a 7 Days in May.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Right. Because the other one, I mean, look, the one that's so relevant is A Face in the Crowd. I mean, that obviously, and there's a lot of good TV. I mean, not to go off on a total tangent there, but
sure.
I've seen some politicians will talk about various shows and they'll say that something like The West Wing was what they wish they were like. In DC, Scandal is what they're afraid it's like, and Veep is probably closest to what it's actually like.
Right.
Which is,
I mean, someone put up a clip from Veep where she's telling them to stop the recount, and it just was perfect, perfect. I am the president. You tell them to stop the count now that it's in my favor. So a lot of that throughout. Certainly, a lot of people have been rediscovering West Wing. A lot of my friends maybe rediscovering it all over again because it was almost painful for some of them to watch the West Wing during these last 4 years because of what you would hope to have in the highest office in the land, and certainly what we did not get from the person who was in charge for the last 4 years or almost 4 years. But some other ones I'd throw out there. I think you make a great suggestion with A Face in the Crowd. That's an Elia Kazan one that a lot of people don't necessarily reference or understand. Those of us who are massive film geeks, we know this film, but a lot of the general public or the mainstream film lovers maybe don't know A Face in the Crowd, and they'll go to On the Waterfront or a number of his other films. But this one is such a great political movie telling the story of Lonesome Rhodes. Andy Griffith, who, by the way, can play an incredible villain and a creepy character here in the film. Patricia Neal, fantastic as the campaign manager, gets involved with him. But it's basically telling this story that is still prescient, still topical, like Network is. If you watch Network and what we're seeing now for TV channels, A Face in the Crowd is prescient. If you reference George Bush or reference Donald Trump, but when you're watching this idea of having a person do the all shucks or I'm just like you populist type approach, and then getting pushed up there by a large conglomerate of very rich people. And so you're seeing that and fool the American people until, of course, he goes that one extra step too far, and then everybody leaves. So if you haven't seen this, it's a really fantastic exploration for sure. I'd throw Frost Nixon out there, Matt, as well. I think Frost Nixon is a great, I know that's like after he's left office, but it's so well written, and Ron Howard does a damn good job directing this movie.
Yeah, that's a really great one. I want to go back to Face in the Crowd really quick, because one of the stunning things about that is you have to almost remind yourself the context of Andy Griffith getting that role, right? Yeah. Because he was a comic, right? And he was basically doing a folksier version of You Might Be a Redneck back in the day, right? Like he was super safe, like total back in the day of G-rated comedy. And so he goes into this movie and it blows people away. Yeah. But yeah, I love Frost Nixon. I mean, seeing Langella in as any politician is a treat.
Oh,
right?
man.
I mean, he's so great at that. Yeah. I really like that one. Also Wag the Dog.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's so bleak when you think about it, but Wag the Dog is terrific.
Wag the Dog is a very possible, well, I would believe realistic approach that a lot of these spin people have. These PR people, you look at someone like, I don't know, I don't want to mention their names, I guess, but people who've worked for campaigns who have like denigrated the the candidate, and then all of a sudden they're working for that candidate. That lets you know that there are quite a number of people who really don't have a dog or a horse in the race. Their only horse in the race for them is their pocketbook or their bank account, and they're willing to go work for any candidate who's willing to meet their price. And we even see it in Veep when we see, some of those people involved in our campaign jump to other campaigns or other candidates and what have you. So there's a string of people who get into politics just as a job, and not even about like, oh, I want to further the ideals of this country. I want to do it, help people, blah, blah, blah. It's more like, well, I get paid six figures to like just say stuff and do it well in front of a camera. So you see that throughout with Wag the Dog, how they take a certain situation and then PR people get involved, how to twist it and all of that. And we're seeing that nowadays, Matt, certainly on both sides of the aisle, people twisting certain things to look a certain way.
Yeah, we absolutely are. And it's, the part of it too is there's so many channels to keep getting the same message on.
Yeah.
It was different. And you were talking about movies that are eerily prescient, like Network, right? Or Facing the Crowd. Right. The other one that's like that on the face, and as we're talking about people who turn their reputations around, even after doing something monstrous, is King of Comedy.
Oh,
go back and watch King of Comedy, and that could be about something right now, right? Absolutely. And if you look at, there'll be people that come out of the Trump White House, out of the administration, that'll end up with terrific jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Either and at places like not just Fox News, but like CNN or wherever as commentators, right? And or they could get hired by somebody on the other side, and that's what they'll do.
Yeah. And we see Donna Brazile on Fox News, like you see Rick Santorum on CNN, and even Hope Hicks left to go work for actual Fox, like the studio, to be a PR person for them, and of course eventually went back to the campaign. But so certainly people are just padding their resumes here to jump on to the next job. Iron Bat says Wag the Dog agrees with us, and Bulworth. Yeah, Bulworth is one I haven't seen in a long time. Did you like Bulworth?
Bulworth is good, and that's one that holds up pretty well, right? I mean, it is Warren Beatty's kind of fantasy of like, what if a politician just said what was on his mind?
Tell it like it is.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's Ugh, I hate that phrase. I hate that. That's a phrase that I can't stand. Yeah. Right? When people are like, I like him, he tells it like it is. I'm like, no. He says obnoxious things that you believe,
right?
That you're afraid to say because you'll get in trouble for it, because you should get in trouble for it,
right?
But he has enough money, that person has enough money that they don't get in trouble.
I love it how when you're talking about equality and you're talking about living up to the ideals and the principles of this country, that you're somehow not telling it like it is, that you're somehow not telling your truth or not telling what the things you want to do. But someone who's being brusque or racist or misogynistic or rude or crude is telling it like it is. Like we all just sit around.
You know what? I'll tell you like it is. Yeah. Like this is the thing I said on Twitter the other day. If your platform heavily depends on you keeping people from voting, maybe your platform needs work.
Yeah.
Call me crazy. Like if you need, if you don't want everyone to vote on your ideas and you want some of them to hold back and maybe not vote against you.
Yeah.
Maybe the voting ain't the problem.
A couple other ones I think we should bring up here, Matt, before we wrap up the show here in a few minutes. The Ides of March. I thought the Ides of March was really well done by Clooney. And, of course, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That idea of the idealistic senator showing up and getting manipulated by the veteran and the bought and paid for politician working for the others, or working for a machine, and what that ends up happening. I mean, that's still prescient and topical, that film.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a good one. And the movie that Jon Stewart gave us earlier this year.
Oh,
right. The election, what? When they go to the small town?
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the name.
No, I'll look it up. Yeah.
Right. That's it's definitely an insider's view of how the media works, but that's also part of it, right? And I know that movie didn't necessarily resonate with everybody, but I think it does show how the media,
irresistible.
Irresistible. I mean, look,
Right.
like covering politics, you know, and again, like I'm going back to the angry old man, get off my lawn shtick, but you could argue one of the worst things that happened in people consuming news about politics is CNN being a 24-hour news channel. Right. The 24-hour, the business of a 24-hour news cycle demands, at the very least, sensationalism, right? Especially once you have multiple channels, right? Because look, like CNN covers stuff all the time, or not, I'm sorry, C-SPAN, right? C-SPAN will cover, you know, and show us the boring parts, and nobody watches C-SPAN. Who cares? Right. The networks that have a 24-hour cycle that do well are the ones that make things sound really salacious or scary or important. And at some point, you either like, and you have to keep ramping that up because you otherwise get used to it. And so, I mean, look, like the cynical side of me says that we get the government we deserve, but I think Irresistible does a good job of showing how what the media and kind of the operatives in both sides will do at the expense of what they say that they want to do.
Right. And there are some great ones there that don't necessarily slide into too cynical of approach, and that's Dave, like you mentioned earlier, the American President. You know, there are a few of those that are Man of the Year, which I think is an interesting little one with Robin Williams.
Yeah, Man of the Year goes in a really weird direction.
Yeah, right.
But you know, I kind of wish they would have either settled on the hilarious idea of a guy like Jon Stewart suddenly accidentally getting arrested, or it then goes into something like Blow Up, right? Where it's like, there's a conspiracy, and it's like, well, that's not how this movie started. You know, the other one that's a little overlooked that I think is hilarious is Head of State.
Oh, the Chris Rock one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Like when he starts describing what America's like.
Yeah.
No, I think Head of State's really funny.
You're the second person that's recommended me going back to watch that. I didn't like it the first time, but maybe I just was a bit too like not into it, and maybe watching it again now with all we've experienced over the last few years might have a little, because I remember Bernie Mac being a part of that thing, so I enjoyed that too, and seeing Chris Rock.
So Chris Rock's character, that's a character that tells it like it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. Right, exactly. That's the hard truth of it. All right, let me get to some Streamlabs, and then we'll wrap up the show here. Matt, Anthony Persak sent in somebody said, I just wanted to say thanks to the both of you for everything you guys do. Much love. There you go, man. A little love to you and to you there, Ashley. And Andrew G sent in something. He said, just got my Lone Wolf and Cub Blu-ray set for a nice rewatch. Rocha, a few words about that series. Matt, have you seen it? And if so, thoughts? Yeah, Matt, have you seen the Lone Wolf and Cub series?
No, I haven't. I've read some of the comics, but I haven't seen the series.
Right. I have a stack of those over there. I love the Lone Wolf and Cub comics. Yeah. The Criterion Collection. This is basically pulp samurai. That's what you're going to get if you haven't seen Lone Wolf and Cub, and especially if there's a 50% off sale right now and you got a little bit of ducats in your bank account that you can spare for an exploration of a foreign piece of media. Certainly Lone Wolf and Cub is fun. And it's fun to watch if you've seen The Mandalorian and comparing some of the things, because throughout the Lone Wolf and Cub, there's an overarching thread that he is fighting against the Yagyu clan, who's killed his who's killed his wife and his kid. Killed his wife, and so they are constantly crossing paths. But also every episode or every show, he is tackling something in a town to save a town or to save people or to fight this crate dragon version of whatever the villain is of the week. So there's a lot of that, but there's also a bunch of TNA. There's some interesting moments, and so it's definitely a pulpy samurai approach. This isn't Regal Samurai. This isn't Yojimbo. This isn't Seven Samurai. This is a little more pulpy, but I think it's worth a watch for anybody who hasn't seen it. Andrew G, it's great you're doing a rewatch of it, and maybe we'll have some conversations on the Patreon about it. That'd be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, real quick, I'll jump in and mention that Jason Wynn brought up Distinguished Gentleman, the Eddie Murphy movie. That movie's really funny.
Oh yeah,
that movie's really funny. And when they do the, I especially like when they're calling to get him on all of the committees, like that whole sequence where they're calling everybody up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Murphy's kind of half-baked Jesse Jackson impression in that is hilarious.
That's right. I remember watching that one and being surprised at how much I enjoyed, because that was that time when Eddie was not coming out with hits necessarily,
right?
Or vehicles. And I think that one actually had some unique, funny scenes to it about the world of politics. All right, that's it for us here. Let's wrap it up here, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us today for Mornings with the Outlaw. This is now a weekly show for those of you who are catching up to what we're doing here. And please, Matt, it's always great to see you, brother.
Thanks, man.
Plug everything you got going on, man.
Yeah, you can follow me at Matt Atchity on Twitter. My podcast that I do with Alonso Duralde and Christy Lemire is called Breakfast All Day. We cover, movies, and we're doing, a little bit of entertainment news. I'm grabbing the best movie marquees every week and sharing them on the podcast. On the video version, we're on YouTube. And there's also an audio podcast. And then on our Patreon, we're doing TV show recaps. And then, check out Moviefone because we need the traffic. So yeah, I'm at Moviefone, and, you can find me. I'm around.
There you go. Any chance you're coming back to do anything in the Schmodown, or was this your last year?
No, I mean, I'll still do it. I think that there should be I've mentioned to Christian that there should be a senior tour. But then I think, yeah, but Rocha's as old as me and I'll get smoked. So that doesn't really help me.
How dare you?
Right? Yeah, because the thing is well, I'm not 50 yet, but if I put it at 45, there's enough still good players at 45 that I'm going to get killed. So, but yeah, I love doing it. I think, I do. I mean, I obviously do better in the team matches. So
yeah.
And someday I'll give the, Inner Geekdom or Star Wars a match, a try, and I'm sure I'll get slayed there. But maybe not. Who knows?
You just never know. You never know who you're going to play against.
Yeah. So you never know, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's luck of the question. I mean, there is a lot of luck involved.
Right.
So it is what it is. But I always love doing that stuff. It's always fun.
Yeah.
I think I'm one of the last one who's still doing not the last one, but half the fun is still being the character. So
yeah,
that's a lot of fun.
I don't disagree with you. A lot of these new people coming in forget the character work is an essential part of what built the Schmodown, and they're just essentially having trivia matches, and that's not what made the Schmodown unique and separate. You got to do great character work, and if you're not doing that, I don't really care about you. That's kind of how I feel about it. So
listen to the Outlaw, kids. Listen to the Outlaw. He knows what he's talking about.
I didn't build this by just sitting around answering questions. So just letting you all know. One last Streamlab boom, then we got out of here. Anthony Sack donated and says, also, does Shooter count as a political film? I really do love that film. Yeah, I think personally, quietly good Antoine Fuqua film. It is political, and Ned Beatty is involved in this, and they're trying to frame him for an assassination attempt. But overall, I don't know if it's necessarily political more than the idea that the people can go after the smaller guy.
I mean, that's the type of movie that's so is the Pelican Brief for that matter, right? Because it's a plot to kill some of the Supreme Court justices, and it's a backdrop for something. But yeah, there's a political aspect to it, more so than say Buckaroo Banzai. The president calls him that, so
it's true. That's true. Or Escape from New York.
Escape from New York.
All right. Well, Matt Atchity, thanks again for joining us. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, please, it was great to see you, man. And please follow Matt at everything he's got going on. He's a great pundit, and it's always it's been one of my pleasures getting to know Matt and then getting the honor of calling him a friend. So please follow everything he's got, and then of course subscribe to our channel down below here, the Outlaw Nation. Subscribe there. Give this video a like. Share it with your friends and family, because when you share it, your friends and family who trust your opinion will take a chance possibly on the content, and maybe they'll join the nation here and have some fun with us. We cover so many things. We got the wrestling show. Don't forget, later on today, we're doing a Strong Style at 5 p.m. PT live. We're going to be hanging out, talk a little bit about pro wrestling news, and then maybe we'll be doing an impromptu Impolite Truths episode sometime this weekend or early next week to talk about the ramifications of the election. But other than that, there'll be a Geek Buddies review of Mandalorian, and there's other content coming down the pike, film reviews, TV reviews, what have you. We'll do a Star Trek Discovery review. All of that happening here on the Outlaw Nation. Don't forget. All right, take care of yourselves, everybody. Have a great
quick thing.
Yeah,
though.
sure.
If you're talking about wrestling, how do we forget Idiocracy?
Oh, yeah.
President
That's the
Camacho.
most obvious one.
How did we forget President Camacho? Come on.
Right. That's a great point. Great point. Get that Carl's Jr. lined up. Let's see here. All right, we're out of here. Have yourselves a good Friday. And look, it's, it might go crazy today. It might get even hairier over the next few days, seeing people's comments and reactions, things, stuff you're seeing in the news. Do yourself a favor, take that mental health break, take that time you need for yourself, and just kind of, listen to music, take a walk, watch a movie. Maybe some of the movies Matt and I suggest to do something like that to take your mind off what's happening and come back to center. Call your friends.
Call your friends.
All of that stuff.
Watch something super escapist.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good weekend for like those movies you love that you haven't sat down and watched. Just turn it on, even if it's just in the background, right?
Absolutely.
Take care of yourselves. It's tough.
Absolutely. It's the number one thing for sure. And then come back and see us again next week for another episode of Mornings with the Outlaw. Much love to you all. Peace. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.